God-level duplication system. Chapter 91. Victory. After a long while, Chen Yuzi came back to his senses and revealed a bitter smile. He had truly witnessed Lin Xuan's talent. He should be the most talented person in the sect. The gap between him and Lin Xuan was huge. He couldn't think of comparing himself with Lin Xuan anymore. He could only look at Lin Xuan from afar. At the same time, a strange thought emerged in his mind. Was this really all of Lin Xuan's strength? Could Lin Xuan still have hidden strength? Also, could it be that Lin Xuan had comprehended the 10% sword intent when he was still in the outer sect? But at that time, with his current strength, he could only let Lin Xuan use his half-incomplete sword intent. When he thought of this, Chen Yu's heart couldn't help but tremble violently. After a long while, he let out a long breath and shook his head. This was impossible. Chen Yuzi muttered in his heart. If this were true, then Lin Xuan would be too terrifying. He couldn't believe it. The few deacons who were 100 meters away from the arena had their eyes wide open. They were stunned for a long time. Only when the scene became lively did they come back to their senses. They looked at each other. They could see the shock in their eyes. This is the 10% sword intent. Lin Xuan has only been at the beginner level for a month, but he has already mastered the 10% sword intent. The power of the sword's intent is too strong. None of us can withstand it. A few deacons were discussing amongst themselves. Their eyes were focused on Lin Xuan, especially when they thought about how they could not withstand Lin Xuan's attack. They had no choice but to retreat 100 meters before they could barely deal with it. They were even more shocked. They recalled that Lin Xuan was just a new disciple and Lin Xuan was only a beginner-level disciple for a month. Not only was his cultivation speed extremely fast, but he had also broken through several major realms, from the early enlightenment stage to the Qi transformation stage and the middle stage. He had also comprehended the 10% sword intent. None of them, who had been in the sect for decades, could withstand his attack. In comparison, they were even more shocked by Lin Xuan's talent. Even the talent of the true disciples couldn't compare to Lin Xuan's talent. At least none of the true disciples could perform as well as Lin Xuan in the Qi transformation stage. They couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The way they looked at Lin Xuan changed. They were respectful towards Lin Xuan, because the strength that Lin Xuan had displayed had surpassed theirs. Even if Lin Xuan couldn't compare to those strong list warriors, he was still one of the best amongst the inner sex elites. They thought about how they had been cultivating for dozens of years and how they couldn't even be compared to a new beginner-level disciple who had only been cultivating for a month. It was as if they had been cultivating for nothing for the past few decades. A bitter smile appeared on the faces of the deacons, and they all felt a sense of defeat. On the arena, Lin Xuan's expression was cold, and his heart was also shaken. He looked at the arena that was mostly destroyed by him, and his heart slightly froze. He had never thought that the 10% sword intent would be so powerful. His strength was probably comparable to that of an ordinary, condensation spin stage peak warrior. Before he used the 10% sword intent, he had never expected it to be this powerful. He just thought that he couldn't lose this bet. Since Chen Xiao had used the half-incomplete saber intent and he was a condensation spin stage level 3, the power that Chen Xiao could unleash was something that even ordinary late condensation spin stage warriors wouldn't be able to withstand. He had already revealed his true strength, so he wanted to expose it a little more. So, he used the 10% sword intent. This was the first time he had used the 10% sword intent. When he combined it with the fierce wind sword technique, which was as powerful as a rank 6 top grade, its power had actually increased by leaps and bounds. The scarlet flame blade like that Chen Xiao struck with all his strength was easily crushed. If it weren't for the fact that he forcefully controlled his strength and Chen Xiao took the initiative to dodge, his attack was enough to severely injure Chen Xiao. He was also unable to completely control such a powerful gale of sword light. In the end, he could only slash the attack onto the arena. In the end, more than half of the gambling arena was destroyed by him. The aftermath of the attack spread in all directions, causing the surrounding disciples to suffer different degrees of injuries. This kind of power had already exceeded his imagination. It looks like I'll have to first increase my cultivation in the future. Lin Xuan looked at the scene in front of him and murmured in his heart. He was only a Qi transformation stage level 4 warrior, and with the 10% sword intent, he could already reach a terrifying level that was comparable to a condensation spin stage peak warrior. What if he reached the late Qi transformation stage or even the condensation spin stage? His first priority was to improve his cultivation base. As for the other warriors, what was more important was their comprehension of the concept, but Lin Xuan ignored this matter. With the duplication system in his body, he could copy the results of others' comprehension. He did not need to waste so much time trying to comprehend the concept. He only needed to focus on increasing his cultivation base and ensuring that he could unleash the power of the concept. In addition, he did not need to consider using a higher tier concept at the moment. This time, he almost couldn't control the 10% sword intent. If he used a higher level concept, he would be injured before he could even hurt his enemy. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. After thinking for a while, Lin Xuan calmed down. He had some ideas. He looked at the referee, wanting the referee to announce the result. He couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, there was only him on the stage, no one else. Lin Xuan shook his head slightly and looked at the deacons 100 meters away. The deacons in charge of recording this stage walked out and said with a bitter smile, "You don't need to look for him. That judge was sent flying by the aftermath of your battle. He is injured and has been carried away for treatment." Lin Xuan heard this, and his eyes revealed a look of understanding. He never thought that this would be the result. However, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this. He continued to look at the deacon. Seeing this, the deacon nodded and continued, "Since the judge is no longer here, I will be in charge of announcing the final result." Lin Xuan wins this gambling match. As soon as he finished speaking, the disciples who were still outside the square were filled with emotion. Before the competition, none of them had thought that Lin Xuan would win. But now Lin Xuan has won. He had defeated the elite of the inner sect with a 10% sword intent and won the gambling match. It could be said that he had once again broken the record of the inner sect. At this moment, everyone had regained their senses. They were shocked by Lin Xuan's strength and talent, but at the same time, they were also deeply moved. They knew that there was going to be an extraordinary existence in the inner sect.